Hello and welcome to Bridgecast. I'm very excited that you all are here with us. We've taken a little bit of a break. We've had some time in between with the holidays and with making sure that we are following all of our safety protocols with COVID-19. Actually, in probably about late November, I actually contracted COVID-19, so we wanted to make sure to take that break to get plenty of time for Michael and I and our guests to be safe. So we're glad that you're here back with us, and we're glad to start back up with this season 2 of Bridgecast. A couple of notes before we jump in is that we have 2 events coming up, and these are 2 of our main fundraisers that are going to be for this year, that we're going to try and do that exchange program for this summer. So one thing I can update you all about the exchange program is that we do plan on doing it. It is going to look a little bit different with the pandemic. Even if we're able to all get vaccines and things are able to clear up, we still want to plan for safety. We still want to plan for keeping in mind how we can keep this as safe as possible and still have the quality of the exchange program to build community. So we're working on that right now. There's a small team of board members and staff members who are working on that plan as we speak. So in order to look forward, we also want to have those fundraisers planned. So I would really appreciate if you all put 2 dates on your calendar. The first is going to be the weekend of Valentine's Day weekend. That will be February 12th and 13th. Those 2 days at ZB Market in Maplewood at 027270 Manchester Road. A percentage of everything sold in that market for those 2 days, the 12th and the 13th, a percentage of that will go to Bridge Builders. So come out and visit us. Our board member Sophia Kuhn was able to make that connection, so quick shout out to her and the wonderful work that she's doing, and she's also an employee at ZB Markets as well. So go ahead and see, and we'll put out some other material about how you can order online with that, and for that money to count and go to Bridge Builders. ZB Markets does a really good fair trade deals and wonderful gifts, so if you're looking to buy some stuff for a significant other or partner on your Valentine's Day weekend, ZB Markets on the 12th and the 13th are going to be the place for you to go. The second is March 10th. March 10th, and this is brand new information we haven't put out yet, March 10th we're going to do a drive-through. And what that drive-through for a cause is going to look like is that we're going to have 2 restaurants. Canetto's, which is an Italian place on the hill, and a Asian fusion restaurant that's located on Cherokee Street. Both those locations have offered meals to get catered, and so you all will buy a ticket beforehand. Drive-through, we give you that meal, and not only do you get really great food, but also a percentage of that money will also go to the exchange programs as well. So keep in mind that February 12th and 13th and March 10th, which is a Wednesday in the evening, located at Melville High School. We're in partnership with STL Caps once more, and the wonderful interns over there are working really hard to create that fundraiser for you. Okay, that is everything that I have right now in regards to logistics, so let's jump into the interview. I'm joined today by Kishon Duke, and he's a good friend of mine and a wonderful activist in the St. Louis area. And he's going to share with us a little bit about his activism, about some of the stuff that can be seen as intersectional between music and activism, and he's going to give us some more of his thoughts. So without further ado, Kishon, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, sure thing. So my name is Kishon Duke. I'm 20 years old. I'm currently a junior right now at Webster University. I'm studying audio engineering, and I do, like lately, I've done a lot of work, or I've gotten a lot more involved with audio engineering and producing my own music and just kind of mixing things like that, as well as playing the music. So it's a combination of both things that I love, doing audio and playing music and stuff like that. So I've done that on the outskirts of, I guess, lately getting involved also with a slight portion of politics, but more so human rights, kind of the social issues, things that are really impacting us, especially me as just say a person of color right now. So yeah, that's kind of the fusion of where I'm at right now.
For sure.
It's music, audio, and I guess racial matters.
Yeah, and we'll get a chance to talk about your music a little bit later, which, by the way, Kishon is he's humble, but he's one of the best bassists that I know for sure, and an absolutely wonderful musician. But also one thing that I've seen you really turn up since the pandemic started is your activism, and that's what really stuck out to me. And like asking to come on and speak with us at Bridgecast is that when a lot of us were kind of going downhill with our influence in March when we all started the lockdown and we were able to have to leave Webster, you turned it up and you were able to reach more of a community in a lot of ways that I'm not good at with social media activism. I think you've really done really well in that area. So do you mind giving us a brief overview of what you're doing right now with activism, and also what has been new for you since March with the pandemic and your activism as well?
So what I'm kind of doing now, or what I've done since definitely like March. To put it frankly, like I've done this over the course of, just since I've had social media like apps and things like that. Like, but it was very much, especially before say the rise of Trump, it was little spurts of like where I might say something involving Black History Month or whatever. But yeah, definitely once the pandemic hit and we were all staying home, that's like right when the shooting of, or like the murder of like Ahmaud Arbery happened, and I think like Breonna Taylor happened right after that, not before. Like I always kind of get them confused as to which happened first. Breonna was after, yeah, and then of course the big kind of capper that started everything, the George Floyd death and stuff like that. Those were very captivating moments for me regarding just like kind of how you feel like your place in the world and stuff. And what I've told like a lot of people is just like the combination of those deaths asked for a lot of other Black people in America, or just people of color who have experienced police brutality or systemic racism and stuff. It compelled me to just want to take like the knowledge that I already had, and then also it also motivated me to go deeper into that knowledge, or like to expand on it rather. So like this whole time I've not only been talking about things that I've kind of known or I've come to know over my course of living, but things that I've come to research and like understand and try to explain and just comprehend for myself. Especially over the course of 2020, which was just the everything.
Sure.
There's just so many ways to describe the year, but definitely, like I would say, like for myself, there was a lot of progress, and like and especially in relation to what I've done with, I guess, activism, which is something I've never labeled myself as an activist, but I can definitely understand why like people would see me in that light of what I've been saying. And like in regards to that, like what I do, it usually it honestly it happens for me like just kind of spontaneously, like on the spot. Like if I see a post or like a picture or something that like I might understand or can just kind of elaborate on or like break it down for the people on my socials, mainly Snapchat, which is like what I use mainly to express my grievances or explain kind of things revolving around Black Lives Matter, or just like the concepts of white privilege, white fragility, or systemic racism, oppression, things that people, which oppression is definitely a term, concept, whatever, that people get, that a lot of people, mainly white Americans, misunderstand as to what it means to be oppressed. But it's just like those kind of things that those like some core things that like I usually go for, and of course just with that, like how my the algorithms of social media are set up for me, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook I'm constantly just being fed just like these things that are happening right now, like the political but human rights matters, like things that are human rights but have been so heavily politicized as either whether it's COVID-19 or just like police brutality and stuff like that. So yeah, like I get fed that stuff a lot, just like from scrolling, and if I see something either from a friend or whatever, it's just something I started doing. Like I said, I started doing a lot more back in March or whatever, and have been going at it since even to this year.
For sure.
So yeah, it just kind of keeps going, and then like on the I guess outside of what I do just on social media, I'm also like over the summer, which I like over the summer of 2020, which I sometimes look at as like the summer of protests. I got involved in protests. I think I had attended 5 over the course, and I definitely like it could have been more, but there was just different points of the summer where I really wanted to prioritize not only mental health but like just safety, because you know COVID kind of ramping up and cooling down. You just never really, in this different circumstances that played into like if you wanted to like you were always there in like as to where you stand and stuff, but you wouldn't actually want to be out there because of safety and things that they're understandable and all that. So but yeah, like that's like the
for sure overview.
Kind of overview, yeah. Over
and to hit on the mental health portion that I think was really important for you to bring up is that I also want to continue to affirm too, and I can affirm for one that social media is labor, right? Like the work that you do on social media, a lot of us see it like we're just scrolling and we're just trying to decompress, but there's definitely some people in this world, and I definitely include you in this circle for me, that are out there doing work, right? Doing work that is emotionally tiring and also spiritually tiring as well. So I think it is work. It's work and it's activism too. That's hard stuff, to say the least, especially in this year of 2020, past year of 2020. Let's talk a little bit about your music and your activism. And I know that there isn't specifically one thing that you would see as an overlap between your music and your activism, but I can see that a lot of it influences both, right? And I know that music is a big part of your life. You've done some solo stuff. You've done stuff with a band called Hazel Avenue, which was started in Webster. And you guys have played multiple gigs, and you also release stuff regularly online. So you want to talk about a little bit perhaps how you see community organizing and activism also being interlocked with your music?
Well, for me, definitely music is my core passion. Is like just what I kind of exemplify in many ways of life. Like many things for me turn into or seen it from like a musical perspective or understanding, or like you said, like influence. And like for activism wise, there's a lot of like meanings and things that you can infuse in your music, or like just music that you've grown up with that like kind of has influenced you as, like say for me, as a musician or just a person. And I've taken like a lot of those influences, of like from like musical influences from different genres and just artists that I've always loved growing up, and a lot of like how that has influenced my play style is and stuff like that. I use that to like the music that I make, and then sometimes I try to incorporate like messages into interlink with activism. Like there was over the summer, and I think actually the day that I did this particular like little rendition, whatever, I went to a protest like kind of right after. There's a song called Little Ghetto Boy by Donny Hathaway, who is one of my favorite artists of all time. I've done like another cover of his before. Anyway, but like I did that song, which is kind of talking about growing up in the ghetto. I don't know if he was talking about himself. He's a black man as well, but just a young black boy. Something that I can see myself as in situations growing up in an oppressive world. Faced with so many inequalities and wanting like a better life for your people and for just everyone, and like it has some of the simple messages of just we want compassion and love to like to be the only things known and stuff like that. Like those were things that was all part of that song, but it was a part of growing up as a black kid in America, and like. That was something that I did, like I said, like it was in the midst of like, all the protests that were kind of happening. And I remember I don't remember exactly what I said on my post, like on Instagram. I put it on Instagram and Facebook, but I kind of interlinked like those, the meaning of that song and like how it relates to me, and as well as like how it inspires like my activism. But yeah.
I remember that specific post, and you get a chance, make sure to also follow Kishon on Instagram, on Snapchat, and on Facebook, and all that other stuff as well. You had the first spiel you gave us. I think one thing that you described really beautifully is also how activism can also be an arc, right? When we start our activism, we don't start out knowing everything, and whether it's even about logistics or even it's about interpersonal things and about issues, as we get challenged with the intersectionality of activism, whether it's from an indigenous perspective, a queer perspective, a Black American perspective. I was interested to know more about what were some of your reflections on this past summer, and then it's also this concept of white fragility that you mentioned earlier, and then perhaps how those two can be combined together.
So like, what was the first part of the question?
Yeah, it was a mouthful.
Yeah.
The reflections on the summer, and what were some things that you took away from you definitely getting more involved in those conversations over the summer?
What probably revealed, I guess what was revealed most is the true nature of, like, the very term you were talking about, white fragility, like the very true nature of it, of what it is, and experiencing that firsthand from like the things that I've posted, like some of the reactions, or just the reactions I've seen in general to the crisis and things that we've seen happen, or things like the events that have unfolded, and like it has really exposed the true nature of what white fragility is, and or like the nature of when white Americans are distinguished as the perpetrator, not the savior, or so. It causes like these feelings of kind of like where or it triggers like these defense mechanisms, basically, rather like where it's more like, say, like, no, it's not our fault, like it has to be like the other person's fault somehow, like something else cause it. And it's a very kind of has very relating traits to like what Trumpism is, of like, and I'm not saying white fragility and Trumpism are any of the same, but of how very common characteristics of what Trump is and stuff like that, or like what his followers do, is deflect, blame, or just completely just lie, you know, and like that's kind of like what the defense mechanisms are of like white fragility, of when like say when the topic is centered around police brutality, and it's saying that there's a problem with police officers killing Black Americans, especially unarmed, or that is the problem of unarmed Black Americans and stuff like that. And it's like the disproportion between that and stuff. And it's just like when those things are highlighted, exposed, you know, and stuff like that, there's always a resistance to acknowledge it. Yeah. And like I said, like the undertones are like the reasonings kind of that lie under that.
Just give a second to recenter where you were at. Is that you were talking about how the blame is not on the specific person, but as a system as a whole, and if we're not willing to accept that system and that blame for how a group takes in, right? Is that where you're headed? That sounded.
Oh, yeah. And it's like that, like the whole nature of not wanting to just acknowledge that as a white person, you are benefited by these systems or the institutions in America that were designed or based off of white supremacy, or the idea of whiteness, where white is pure, everything else is just different, and sadly, for it being different, it gets treated as, you know, inferior, and all these other concepts. But yeah, tying that back into what white fragility kind of is in a nutshell is the like the feelings of individualism when it isn't an individual focus. Yeah. That's probably one thing that I have noticed the most. Is like a lot of things that I post, which late, like, or at least like in recent weeks, I've gotten more direct, say, or blatant. It feels like so like some of the responses that I might get, or even just some of the feelings I get from how I word things, of what I think people might, you know, come off at, or thinking of it as. It's like thinking that now you just sound like all white people are racist and things like that, when it's like that comes with understanding the context of what is being talked about and who is referring to and things like that. And like that's another thing that revealed to me is that a lot of people don't have a good grasp of contextual analysis of like understanding like kind of who like when it says white people are racist or like all white people are racist, it's almost like saying like lost my train of thought on that one too. See, I just be going off on little tangents.
No, it's good though. It's good where you're headed, and I think that one thing that is important, definitely to highlight with what you're saying, Keyshawn, is that context is important, and also definitions are important too, right?
Yeah.
And for what sometimes we can conceive with racism is not always the same definition, right? And so I can definitely see where you're coming from with that, and I hear what you're saying. Let's talk a little bit about 3 weeks ago, with the insurrection. What happened, I was watching it on TV, stomach dropped, I was there, I was present, I was, it sucks. And so let's talk about that a little bit, let's debrief on that, and then what are your thoughts and reflections over that event, and to share with us your mind.
Well, like on that day, I was at work, and I just remember, I had gotten a break, and like I went out to my car and stuff, and like first notification was from like Snapchat or like that. It was a group chat. Opened it, and it was just all stuff about like the Capitol, or kind of like it, like it was saying like it had been sieged or whatever. And so I was like, oh, and then looked at the rest of my notifications. It was all that like the Capitol has been invaded, all these kind of things, and like I literally like for the first time and forever, like I really shook my head or something, just like complete disbelief.
Yeah.
But I would say disbelief. But it just wasn't for me. Right off the bat, it wasn't shocking, or it wasn't like no one had saw this coming kind of thing. Even though largely like the reaction afterwards has been like, no one saw this coming, or the thing that has bothered me the most is this isn't who we are, this isn't America, which with as much hope and aspirations say that I have for our now new president Joe Biden, I haven't appreciated the way of how he's like, America is better than this, which that sounds hopeful and optimistic, and saying that America is good, which all that could be true, but it's just like ignoring what that like event was a culmination of, or what had led to that, and saying what this country has been since its very inception.
Yeah.
Which all of that happened. What happened at the Capitol was like all that kind of boiling over, and it was only because you had like the right person, the right demagogue, or the wannabe authoritarian Trump inciting that, like he literally just basically like put the words out and encouraged him to do it, and then just stepped out the way. And it was like, but it's not just what he did or said. It's not just him. It's all the white president, or I won't say a white presidents, but just the culture, white culture stuff that has kind of let these things go unnoticed, or rather like just kind of undetected, of where it was never seen as such a threat, or like say where the focus was always on something that was very much less deadly, or like in that way, or say being domestic terrorism and stuff. And it's just that all the claims that this is not who we are is just completely disregarding the true nature of what this country is, and this country is racist. America is racist. I'll say that time and time and again. This is a fundamentally racist country, that it was founded literally on the backs of slaves. Like that can be the start and the end to why this country is racist. But I mean, and it's also that for that be the way that this country was kind of built and has turned into what it is. It's also that that's in the past, but the past had never been acknowledged. It had never been there's never been reparations. There's never been like, this was a very brutal time and like our country's history and all those reasons and stuff like that, and like okay, now we need to, like kind of in our own way, like in the right way, face like the repercussions, like to build over that.
Yeah.
There's never been that. There's always just been the continued dominance of white supremacy, or just in nationalism, which nationalism as just the definition or the concept or whatever it's just problematic. I just find it of just like what that means of like the superior. It's like the superiority complex behind nationalism,
Yeah.
which is just like when you're putting yourself above someone else, no matter if it's someone from a foreign country. It's sad that it plays into people in your own country. It's still like that superiority complex, and like there's just so many things wrong with that because it's like it creates these hierarchies, and and it creates a lot of what we're facing right now with racism, the attitudes of hate, or like I'm better than you, that you're this, and that kind of stuff. Things that we see common within MAGA Nation are now, which I hope we don't ever have to talk about them again at some point, but
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. And especially with the concept of how this has been boiling over and been building up for decades, with ideas of centricism, ethnocentrism, Eurocentrism, any different idea that we are therefore the center and the canon of knowledge or of the way that things are supposed to be. I can absolutely see where you're coming from, how that's building up to when that status quo is challenged, that is why that anger is boiling over.
That was like the next point I guess I wanted to kind of get to of like why that happened is because of now like here we are in 20th century America or so, like 2020, 2021 or so, like these have been very already 2021. I mean, it's still like has already been pretty transformative as to what has happened, say like at the Capitol, but it speaks volumes onto what has happened in this country over the generations and things of like the progressive change and like the racial makeup and just the diverse society that like I guess we have started to see kind of take root in this country with like I've seen a couple things been talked about where just like in the next 50 or so years or so Caucasians or white Americans won't be the majority in this country, and so like it just kind of speaks to how close like 50 years or whatever it can be far away, but still just like so close, especially speaking for like a nation that's like how close you like that like this big moment of change, like it's like almost an overhaul of what the norm, the status quo has always been, and then that whole thing about the status quo being challenged, and that's why we're seeing like these reactions from white supremacists and just racist people or just very fragile natured people, whatever. It's because like they're feeling like that the traditional values of America is starting to go away, which it is. But for people like us, it's a promising, like hopeful sign that now equality is kind of on the horizon, that it may be there. But for white Americans who have always been used to like the traditional values that have always benefited them, they've never seen anything wrong with it. Now that they're seeing these things are being challenged, either with the first black president happening when Barack was elected back in 2008, and like that it seemed like that was like it was a big moment of change. And like one thing about that is like we always see a counter to like those kind of historical kind of like moments like taking place, like when Barack was elected. Not long after we started hearing about the Tea Party, which was kind of like it was like a counter movement to like kind of his election, his campaign, his administration, and like it kind of infused a little bit into like the Republican Party, which always stood in the way of Obama. And then just like with the ending of the Obama era, in 2015, 2016 or so. That's what like in a lot of ways spurred the rise of Donald Trump and his campaign, and what his campaign was largely centered around, or what he presented himself as, which was like a populist, which is like kind of like which as a politician, which you can kind of present yourself as, is like where you play on the emotions and feelings of whatever demographic you're appealing to, which for him, of course, was just white Americans.
Yeah.
And he, for one, it's just funny how his political career started off of a racist lie on Obama's name, and then like it's kind of like he was the counteraction to like the election of Obama and all like the 8 years that we had of him, and then like the response to that is because white Americans didn't want to necessarily, or I would just say the white demographic that voted Trump in didn't want to see, because I want to categorize, I don't want to keep saying white Americans as just like the whole, but but just like that, the makeup of whoever voted him in saw like, or didn't want like that, the continued progression of like of who we see in like our government, like the top government officials and things like that, It was starting to break away from the norm, because he was the first black president, and now just today we have the first black Asian American vice president, female at that, and so like this is definitely another sharp, or like I would say resonant moment in American history that will continue to challenge the traditional values of America, like the status quo. It's like never has a woman been in such a high position of power, and never even just like in our government now, like what we see, never have so many women of different backgrounds represented in our government. What we're seeing from AOC to Cori Bush or Ilhan Omar, like these are very very progressive. For one, like they are progressives, but like it's a sign of change, and stuff like that.
What you're saying,
lost train of thought, but
no, what you're saying makes a lot of sense, man. And you're right. Today is the day that Joe Biden took sworn oath for President of the United States, and Kamala Harris for the Vice President. And in my mind, a very historic day again in the United States. But just like you said, it's far from over, and the work that we all have to do is still monumental. So I really appreciate what you have to share, and I think that what you're sharing is inspiration for myself. So thank you for your time. I have one last question, and this is always something that I do with the guest on Bridgecast, is to offer a space for you to uplift and to talk about what you want to. And a lot of this has been built around what your specialties are and what your knowledge is, but again, this is whatever you want to talk about. The space, the floor is yours.
That gives me open terrain to just choose of what to speak on. I guess I gave a pretty thorough explanation of what I've been doing with activism, but in regards to my music, I hadn't touched on like a lot outside of just me being an audio major at Webster, musician. I play electric bass and things like that, but it would be cool, I guess it'd be a way for me to kind of throw myself out there. You guys check me out on any streaming service, from Spotify, SoundCloud, even Pandora, Apple Music or whatever. My name is Keish, and I just put out my first ever project. It's called The Groove Pack, back at the end of November or beginning of December. It's just it's a collection of all this kind of songs or little tunes, renditions, and things I worked on over the course of the pandemic and stuff, since we have been home, from COVID. And it was things I started back in April and had just kind of finished up towards the end of October, and then I got ready to try I was it would be good to just put this out as a representation of what kind of music I like, because the music that I created was very has direct correlation with the music I listen to on the daily, which is a lot of jazz, a lot of funk, a lot of R&B, a lot of neo soul, pop, rock, just so much. If you name an artist, there's a good chance I've probably heard of them or know someone kind of similar to them. It's just Uh, but yeah, check me out on those streaming services and
For sure.
be. Or I'd say stay tuned.
Yeah.
I'm working on like this little Valentine's project that I plan to release a single towards the beginning of February, and then that single will also be a part of like this EP about comprising probably around 4 or 5 songs. It'll just be like my next release, and it'll be a token to the day of love. Hopefully it'll be a blessing to all the romantics out there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I appreciate your time, Keyshawn, and also make sure you all check out Keyshawn's music as well. Again, wait for that EP to drop on Valentine's Day. Hopefully we'll be able to get some sort of card or flyer to put at our table at ZB Markets so that we can hand out that stuff too over there and get that connection. And then also we're trying to connect Keshon with our exchange team for this summer too, if that works out with everything. So, and Keshon's another great example of young adult leaders that we're trying to uplift within our community of St. Louis and all around the nation as well. Keshon, again, I can't thank you enough for your time, man. For you to spend your time talking to us and letting us in about the activism, the great work that you've been doing, and the wonderful music that you've been producing in this past year, and I can't wait to see the more stuff that you'll do.
Thank you, man. I always appreciate it.
All right, everyone back at home, we'll see you next week. When we get this video out, it'll probably be Friday or so. We recorded this on Wednesday, the inauguration, and I look forward to seeing you all soon.